Hi, this is Laurie from Interior Design Community. And of course, this is To the Trade. And I have Niall with me. Hi, Niall.
Hi.
And then we have an amazing guest today, Mary Douglas Drysdale. Oh my gosh, such an icon. So excited to have you, Mary. We've been friends for a long time, but I just am a fangirl about your work. I just love, love, love it. For
That's
those of
very
you
kind.
watching, Mary has been on more covers of design magazines than any other designer in the world. She is just an absolute icon, and we are so lucky to have you. So thank
Oh,
you for taking the time.
I was thrilled that you asked.
Oh,
Absolutely.
I love it. I love it. So why don't we start with we're going to ask you some different types of questions. We'll start with your personal journey and artistic philosophy. Your designs are absolutely celebrated in the industry and they're elegant and timeless. How do you define your timeless design and how does that evolve for you over the years?
I think that probably over the years, timeless designs when I was 14 looked a little different than the timeless
How
now.
do you change the timeless has to
Well,
evolve?
why don't we start out by defining what is timeless? And then we can say, and why, what makes something
Sure.
timeless?
Yes.
So basically, I think I always start out, what isn't it? And so timeless is not trendy. It's not the latest suggestion from any of the fabulous design magazines that we read. It is something that is a design, whether it's an architectural design or an architectural design with an interior component that does seem to transcend time. It feels good 10 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years from now. And so the back part of that is that I think that one of the reasons that one gets this feeling is that, and for me, I'll just speak for myself. I think that if one adheres to, I think my printer's going off, it's loud.
Yeah, no.
If one adhere, okay, don't worry. All right. So if one adheres to, let's just say some traditional styles, be they Georgian, colonial, Victorian, Art Deco, Art Nouveau, mid-century modern, if you then make any changes to the project that you're working on. I'm always inspired by the buildings that I'm working on, typically which are renovations or additions to. So I'm not setting out to do something brand new, but so I'm well studied in all the architectural periods, and I make absolutely sure that there aren't any glitches, if you will, in the designs. And I try and get the feeling of the plan to be the same kind of feeling that one might have had, let's just say, in the early 1900s. So I'm looking at art, architecture, and decoration, which are the elements of design that I would consider important and completing to a space. So the architecture is something that I try and continue the idea of the original author. The art, I think I often use as a contrast. I, but since it's removable from the walls, it can be its own thing, and hopefully you've curated it well. And the relationship with the wall is so that it can bring some sense of community, some sense of interest of the people who live or lived there. And then there's a little filter, if you will, is that if you're doing paneling in the house, then you can make sure that all the paintings and objets are embraced by the paneling, because the paneling, then the painting fits nicely in the paneling. And then the other thing is that I think that truly timeless design isn't just about the aesthetics. I think that it has to work. When people ask me what I do, often I say, I create useful beauty. And basically, a building, a monument can become timeless because it continues to be relevant. It continues to be useful. In my own planning of interior spaces, I'm always planning for it to be, this is how we can use it today, but I'm always thinking about tomorrow, like how might it also be used? So I think that it's a combination of very refined aesthetics, a if there's art involved, then maybe it's a collection of a certain region, or all modern art, or art from the 20s. That again, it's the collection itself that gives cohesion to the entirety, and that the project remain useful, relevant, and well maintained.
I love that. I love that. And it's a lot harder to achieve that than it sounds. It's so much thought goes into that.
The thing is this, that design, I happen to be a fanatic. I love design. I could, if I wake up in the middle of the night and I have a good idea, I'm going to race to my desk and I'm going to start doing sketches, and then I'll be whistling and humming and I'm having a really good time. But it is, I think that many people don't understand actually what the ambit of responsibility is and the amount of detail that's required. Most of our jobs, we're doing the interior architecture, we're doing the interior design, the decoration, the art consulting, and construction supervision. That's a big
That's a
scope.
lot. It is a big job and a lot of moving parts, and managing that is like being a composer and of a symphony. You're bringing all those parts together. And you've led such an interesting life. What are some personal experiences that have defined and shaped your design philosophy, your absorption of the of creativity in that moment? It sounds like you get a lot of inspiration from many different
I
resources.
do. I do.
Yeah.
I really try. And I think that's, frankly, I can get inspired by walking around the block. So that's a very low level. But I had, my parents lived in Charlottesville, Virginia, and my father had attended the University of Virginia undergraduate and UVA law. So, and then he had a law practice in Charlottesville for some time, and he was teaching a specialized class in law. So I found myself exposed to the great architecture of the university and frankly just playing on the lawn. Take my dog up there, had a great time. But we were also, Charlottesville was a much smaller town then. And somehow I'm not sure how my, whoops. Oh, we were supposed to turn that off.
Okay.
Sorry. We had many private visits of to Monticello, and that was just extraordinary to go up the back stairs where nobody can go, to go up to the ballroom, just to walk the property. And we also had a lot of other early Virginians who built quite extraordinary houses. I would say that as a very young child, until I was 10 or 12, had an enormous impact on me. Then I decided that I would do a grand tour. They have, I'm always choosing the path that that everybody else isn't doing right now. So I had read about architects and designers and artists from 100 years ago or less. We're taking the grand tour of Europe. They were still doing it then. I said, why shouldn't I do this? So I had to make some promises to my parents about the schools that I would attend and how often I would write back home, and that I promised not to ever have a car accident or drink much.
I love it.
But I had a wonderful time. And so I traveled from, I used Paris as my base, but I traveled to Italy, to Spain, to Portugal, to Austria, to Germany, to, let's see, England, of course, to Sweden, to a lot, as many countries, Belgium, too, as I still have the maps. I'll have to unroll it and get it in the suitcase. And I have my grand tour is recorded. So that was really extraordinary because also, just from a learning point of view, but from another point of view, I wasn't under the wing of my parents at that time. It was really the first time I was, okay, you can go be in a foreign country and take care of yourself. So it was an amazing time.
I bet it was.
Actually,
We're
I
going to
traveled.
Paris, and Niall and I are both going to Paris for Maison this in January. We're very excited. So I know that those moments, they're like when you first see the architecture, it's just it's overwhelming in some ways because as Americans, we just don't have that history to be in front of of a building that was there before Jesus Christ was born. It's just it feels remarkable.
Yeah, but it shows a remarkable culture and a remarkable place. Think about it. Okay, so the architecture is great. The fashion is phenomenal. The food is uh, uh, gorgeous. Plays, music, the culture, the museums. It's just a very rich, dense, exciting place to be. And I'm really glad that I was able to live there and spend as much time as I did.
It must have really impacted your entire life to have that opportunity, I'm sure.
It did. I tell you, I started wearing all black, and I noticed that the French women, they had black flats, they had black heels, they had black boots, and their purses were black too. And I thought, gee, if I look at my own closet, I've got something a little pink over here, a little orange over there. I can pull it all together. Anyway,
That's
so
what
they have a great sense of style
they do.
and a beautiful language too.
Ah, absolutely. Now, design, I find, is so deeply personal. You're in those clients' homes and in their lives in such a real way. How do you manage projects where you're allowing your client to have input, but you're still maintaining your sense of design in the project? How are you maintaining that while still infusing your work with what clients have?
First thing I want to say is that different designers have different ways of going through project work. And I believe fundamentally that conversation and collaboration is the way to get the most responsible end result. Because if you can't get your client to share, "Oh, boy, you know what would really make me happy?" Or, "Oh, I know it may be popular, but I hate green." I mean, you have to make them feel comfortable. They have to understand that it's a sharing place, and it's an iterative process back and forth. Proposals, response, changing the design in order to accommodate comments. So conversation is part of it. But I have another funny little thing. And I think we've heard about, at least I have, or I think I'm pronouncing it correctly. In acting, in order for actors to do a role, I think it's called the Stanislavski method. There is a way that actors use of soaking into in order to do a better job, to understand their character. Now, I don't try and become the character of my client, but what I do try and do is to really listen to them so that in my version of design method, I try and understand their motivations, how they talk. I look at the things that they're wearing, and then I'm not them, but I really make an effort to find the things that they find attractive or funny or boy, they'd really like to have that. And it makes a difference because at the end of a project, if you can finish one another's sentences, then
Wow.
that's good.
That's really good.
That was
That's
excellent. Oh my
yeah,
goodness.
that's
Light bulb
gold.
moment.
Yeah, really.
Absolutely. That is so powerful because I can imagine putting yourselves in the client's shoes and
Mhm.
really
Yeah.
trying to envision their navigation of the home, what they
Right.
enjoy. it easier almost
Yes.
to do. Absolutely. That is fascinating.
Well, there's another little piece to that. It's
Sure.
small,
Yeah.
but so sometimes over the years, well, I think that we all have had the opportunity to work with successful, demanding people who are very smart, and they don't want to waste their times. This is the job to be done. And so sometimes young designers are not accustomed to dealing with the demands of someone who's a little bit more seasoned. So I get this, I don't really want to work for her. She yelled at me once. And I said, you know what? Do you want to be a really good designer? Yeah, I do. I do. I really do. And I say, isn't there something that you can identify with or find in this client that you like? One little thing. Is she polite? Does she respond to your calls? Does she smile from time to time? Does she thank you for your work? Is she doing something with the communities that has nothing to do with our project? Just find that one thing and forget about all the rest. Because when you can connect with that person, when you can connect to something that you find positive, all the other stuff goes away and you can do a better job.
You can forgive it. And that's the thing. It's to hold the resentment doesn't help you or help the client. Yeah, absolutely. That's so great. That's so great. When you think back on the early days of that you were in design, was there a pivotal project or challenge that you feel defined the trajectory of your career?
Well, probably so many, but yes, in particular, I had done a show house early in a designer's life. They tend to do more houses because it's a way to get out there and
Right.
show people your work. So I had taken a smaller space. It was two hallways, one on the first level and one on the second level, and quite a lovely staircase in an older home. It's not a space that you would really furnish a lot with. Nonetheless, I did it. And my parents were collectors, and I, in my own way, I love art, and I chose to take Sam Gilliam. He is one of the most famous African-American artists to have worked in this country, and he's from Washington, but very sadly in the last year he passed away. And in any event, I had an enormous Sam Gilliam and some other very well-known regional artists. And this funny little woman, she must have been all of 4'6", and she had a fur coat on, and she said, I'm going to bring my husband back. Because I think that you're the only designer in Washington who knows anything about art. So shortly thereafter, I met the husband, and I was engaged to do the space. They had purchased the penthouse in a new building going up, whereas the developer had floor plans. I didn't like them, so they didn't like them. So I was going to replan the space, but their art collection, sadly, they passed away in the last couple of years, is at the Hirshhorn Museum.
Oh, wow.
And
Wow.
it is the Hirshhorn Museum. And,
Wow.
and it was so amazing for me because I have major $1 million pieces all around me. And they were like, okay, where would you put this piece, Mary? How do you want to define it? Then, of course, the director of the Hirshhorn Museum would have to come by every once in a while and look at my plans, like technically approve them, but just make sure that I wasn't putting anything big in front of to do anything to harm them.
Oh, my goodness. Yes. That was so wonderful.
But the other thing is that after we got past that part and the furniture, they allowed me to design the furniture. And then there were a whole bunch of other little things. For example, waste paper baskets. And Marvin was the husband's name. And he said, Mary, you are so good. You're going to leave that ready-made waste basket in our beautiful powder room? No, I don't think so. I think you should really design that, don't you? And so it was such a
Wow.
remarkable experience because I had these two people who lived, ate, drank art, and they gave their entire apartment over to me. And they were such brilliant collectors that, as I said, it's all in the Hirshhorn now. But so what did I learn from that? What I learned that every single solitary corner, piece of anything, color, table, whatever, is important. And you're not complete until you have at least considered it all.
That is fantastic. And that I would think would believe that there are probably designers that would turn down being in a show house if they weren't getting a specific room. And that might not have led to this amazing client that you
Right,
were able to get, that you had were such kindred spirits with, because
right,
they believed in you, it sounds, just as much as you needed them to believe in you, which is fantastic.
right.
Your work often bridges classical design and contemporary aesthetic. How do you approach balance without compromising authenticity? It's so difficult when those are the two elements you're working with sometimes to do it well, and you do it well.
Well, I'm going to keep going back to, I'm going to keep going back to the scope of the work that I usually do for all of my projects. So that usually means that I'm involved in the architectural interiors, adding to, rearranging. And what I like to do is I like to have this body of work, which is all the flooring, the lighting, the paneling. Oh, might be a Great Dane that's going to make an appearance. But it's all right if he does. So the thing about that is that the architectural interior is then really authentic. Even if it's new, it's done correctly in the style of. The other thing I feel that's important to me is that most of the houses that I work on are in fact not museums. And so it's really important that you can see that people are existing in today's world and that they're respecting the past and they're looking forward to the future. So, as it turns out, ever since that, those people who are connected to the Hirshhorn, I've actually done a lot of worked with collectors, and now I'm really helping young people make their own collections. So I let the modern art, although I let modern art because it is also individual. It's removable from the wall. It fits where I've planned for it to be. It fits perfectly. So proportion is important. It fits on the wall. But it takes nothing. It takes nothing. Those two things, bold, modern art, or any art, can fit perfectly with a classically designed and built out interior, as long as the systems of proportion and emphasis are followed. It's one isn't glued to the other one. You can remove it. So that is what keeps it authentic to me. And then let's just say I don't do interiors pretty much that have all traditional furniture in them, but I might have transitional pieces that will echo back to the architecture of the building or what we're making it be. So it keeps it in that way. It's up to date, if you will, in terms of, how people sit and use spaces. And it refers back to the architectural interior. And I also keep it light because truly, well, I grew up reading ads for Baker furniture in magazines. And I kept thinking, did they really live like that? There's a chair every place. I got a little older and I learned that no, they didn't really live like that. And there is a spareness to true classical work that I find lovely. I find that I'm always turning and it's almost as if I'm seeing something for the first time again. And I feel like there's always the feeling of more space. Did I answer your question?
No, absolutely.
Oh,
Absolutely.
good.
Yes. Art and architecture are central to your design ethos. Can you share a moment that a piece of art or an architectural detail profoundly inspired one of your projects?
A piece of art, or let's see, I think a piece of art. I have to,
Come back to that one if you'd like.
yeah, we can come back.
Come back to that one because there are so many. I'm sure that you can think of so many pieces, and it's hard to define which piece was any more pivotal than another. That's fine.
Okay.
This one's very good. What role does story? And I love this question. What role does storytelling and emotion play in your design process?
Okay. I'm always I'm hoping that, I guess it starts out with me hoping that people do have history with their families and they do have history growing up in high school and the major events of their lives. And uh, I try and I make a joke out of it. I said, this really doesn't have to be as expensive as you might think. Why don't we start by doing shopping in your attic and your basement?
Right.
Is what I thought you, but I just do it that way because there are things that sometimes people put away that, given a different color of lip polish, a coat of paint, reupholstery, you can bring those things in some way. And so I like the pictures and the things from the past. And if this is a nice story. I had a client who's a lawyer and she moved to Georgetown because she had 5 kids or 4 kids, sorry, and, was living out in Bethesda and wanted to move into a tiny place in Georgetown because then she could walk downtown. And we were going through her things and she said, oh, look at this. This is a chair that my grandfather made for me when I was about 10. And it looked like a spindleback chair and he had painted it a green with little florets on it. And then she said, and in fact, you know what? I think that there's a chest of drawers that goes with that. And she said, what should we do with this? And I said, I think it's absolutely fabulous. I'm going to do a room around those pieces. And I hired Billet Collins, and they're wonderful decorative painters. And we were able to get a green on the wall. It's a very small room that was very close to the green in the painted furniture. And then they like flowers. And so each flower was hand painted, taken from the little motifs on the chest and the chair. Anyway, so and it's still one of her favorite rooms. And in terms of the joy, I don't think that there are that many surprises in my work because of the collaborative nature, getting them to approve this and see that and all that. But the happiest is actually for me.
Yes.
I know when I start these projects that I can make them something really special. And really part of my job is holding the client together. Think about it. If you're renovating a house, somebody just spent X number of dollars on the house and they're watching you make these plans. And then you say, yeah, and then we're going to tear this down and we're going to tear that down. You're thinking, oh my God, what is she doing to my real estate investment? I have to keep everybody like calm and held together. But I have every confidence always that they are going to turn out, and they do. But when you see the clients finally, because then they confess sometimes, I didn't really understand all the drawings, but I had such faith in your decision to go this way, and you were so enthusiastic. I just had to do it. And then you see them. I have a project that I finished last summer, and it's a couple that lives in Logan Circle. They hardly ever, according to them, I don't know, but according to them, they hardly ever entertained. And now they're so proud and they're so happy to live. One of the fellows doesn't want to leave the house because he says it's the nicest place in Washington.
Love that.
And the other one says that now he's inviting people over because it's the coolest place in Washington. And I have become friends, Facebook friends with his parents.
I love that. I love that. Imagine the feeling that the nicest place that you know in Washington is your home. That
Yeah,
is
isn't
that is
that cool?
a remarkable thing that a designer can do for a person. And it's so personal and it should be. If you've spent the investment and if you've
Absolutely.
gone with that designer, you've listened to the designer, at the end of the day, you should be getting something that is so tailored to you. So
Precisely.
yes.
Precisely.
Oh, and I love that. And the storytelling part of that too, with I could just picture the chair and the chest of drawers and the painting. And there are pieces that everyone has that are meaningful to them that I have a hope chest that my grandfather made. You know what I mean? I have things in my own house that and that's how we have connection to things that
Exactly. Exactly.
absolutely. I
I
love
completely agree.
that's so fun. I design often reflects culture. And how do you ensure your work resonates with the cultural and historic context of the space and region?
Well, I would say that is a very good question, but I think that the parameters of have changed a little bit. 100 years ago, I think that, for example, if you went to New Orleans, you might find more readily a certain kind of architecture, and maybe in upstate New York or certainly in Washington, D.C. But I think now it's so prevalent, even it was, however, at the turn of the 20th century, when people are building houses, grand houses, yeah, substantial houses, not grand houses. I think that they tend to fall back to French style, English style, Georgian, federal, colonial, Greek revival, Victorian, not so much. But it's or Art Deco, Art Nouveau, and mid-century modern. So I think that what's happened is, whereas 100 years ago, you might be able to go to a certain part of the country and in a smaller city or a village, all the houses are going to might look very much the same. And they're certainly influenced by weather, building materials that are available, customs. I just think that the world in which we live doesn't force us. No, force is kind of a negative word. It actually, I believe, encourages us to look beyond beyond our states or beyond our cities. I think I find that people are falling in love. Oh, I must have something Italian, and I'm thinking, you want something Italian? This is two-part circle. But I obviously, if I was doing projects that were on beaches, if I was doing projects where high rises, probably you're on the 100th floor, there are other things that would influence, or even second homes or homes in the country. All of those would have particular elements of design that would need to be considered. But I think that I do a lot of city homes, and I don't see particularly how actually the region where I did a couple of years ago, I did a property for some people in California, and they were golfers, and in Boston, where they also had another place, and they were like identical. They weren't identical, but there wasn't anything that other than the golfing, the
Right.
proximity to the golf course. I just I think that, and plus I fear that the world is becoming, I think it's becoming more homogenous. I think that the buildings that you look at in Japan and in London and in Paris and in Washington and New York are, they even do this on TV sometimes. Okay, they show a picture and say, what city is that? And people have the struggle determining what it is because, like, there are not that many Eiffel Towers out there that could give it up.
Right.
That's I find sad. I actually find it sad that we all dress alike. I wish that people would. I sometimes actually, maybe that's why I buy artisan clothing, because I like the idea that it was handmade, and I have a little story in my mind about handmade in the village with, and
that
so
though.
and so can go to school now.
Exactly, exactly. I think that's wonderful. I agree with you. I was talking to someone today about the Home Alone house. I don't know if you ever saw it, but when we watched the movie, the Home Alone, it was in the 90s, so it was today it would be outdated, but they show pictures of it because that same house sold recently.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it's
And for how much?
it looks so bland. Is the word for it. All of the wallpaper, all of the personality was out of it, and it's just whites and grays and no wallpaper of any kind. It felt, and I think the homogenization of design it's actually a real problem, and people not feeling the empowerment to have their space reflect them, which is sad. I wish more people would realize that it's okay, and so your resale value will be fine as long as
Exactly.
at a
Don't
point.
don't make any mistakes where the only person in the world that's going to this is you. Make it personal, but don't make it so personal that it's
A shrine. Doesn't need to be a shrine to you, but it should be reflecting of something that's meaningful to you, for sure. This is an interesting question, I think. You've sustained a celebrated career in a highly competitive industry. How have you approached through the years reinventing yourself, reinventing your marketing, keeping up with the times, and always presenting who you are in all of what you do?
um, let's see how many things were there. So just keeping up with the times. I think that um I don't do show houses pretty much anymore. I think that many of us have discovered that social media is a way of getting out there and communicating with people. Um, that a lot of people see. I do participate in. I do a lot of competitions. Actually, we're supposed to send off tonight our competition for the Andrew Martin Interior Designer of the Year competition, but it just has to be in New Jersey on Friday. But excuse me, I'm sorry, on Monday. But this will be the fourth time I've done that. I did for Home and Design, our regional magazine here, a design excellence competition, which we were a winner in. I am doing something with Interior Design Magazine. I'm thinking about starting my book. What do you think?
I love that idea. Absolutely do that. Honestly, if you do, you let us know and we will promote it ourselves. We have a massive database. We just did our final push into our database for this year, and we have 150,000 interior designers in our database.
Wow.
Yes.
That's
So
really significant.
very significant. We've been working very hard on it all year, and we're very proud of it. We have a lot of information about our community, and we want to be able to obviously give them information that is meaningful.
Right.
And a book of yours would be absolutely one of those things. We would love that.
Okay, good. I needed some encouragement. But I think that I actually love to do talks. And social media is there not so much show houses anymore, but competitions. You've got to publish. I always think that in our world, publishing is like being an actress. You don't have to you don't have to have an article every year or every month, but you can't be like, yeah, the last time I had something published was that 6 or 7 years ago? I don't know. It's like the Hollywood syndrome, because if an actor went that long without having something really interesting to show for it, then they would be considered washed up. Whatever happened to whatever. So I just think that it's just part of being out there is getting published. And I like to get covers. I'm
Well,
going to admit
you're
that.
good at it. You're good at it. Well done.
Really?
We're up to 80 now.
Oh my God.
That is so fantastic.
Wow. Oh,
I have to get, my goal is 100. So
100,
I
of
was going to
course.
say, I think
I
100.
may have to
Yeah,
count my
yeah,
own book. I may have to do my own book, just like
yeah.
back cover, front cover.
I love that. I love that. And so social media has been a part of what your interests are moving forward. And how else are you adopting technology in your design practice?
Oh, if you talk to anybody here, they'll say, she doesn't. She makes us do it. Okay, I think that in terms of, we should look at that answer. We should look at that question. First, the culture of technology and the culture of production and process in the design field has changed. When I grew up being a young designer, we did everything by hand. We had the vellum, we drew everything by hand. And then it started, of course, earlier in the commercial firms, which had all gone over to CAD. But a little bit later in the residential firms, I would say by the early 1990s, people were doing CAD then. Now there's so much competition with CAD. There's Revit and there's a lot of them, of platforms that will allow you to do drawings on a computer.
Yes.
So that is something that has been a large technological change. Well, the other thing I would say is the speed with which one can get 3D renderings. That's also been a big change. But I think that some of these things, all things used responsibly that we've talked about are helpful. But I also think that they can be harmful, if you will. There are a lot of people out there who are just ripping a few pages out of a magazine, or they'll go to Pinterest and say, oh, I like that Drysdale thing, or I like this somebody else thing, and that. They put it together and they make a rendering and they have no real understanding of design. And the rendering pretends a level of competence, which is not there. And so in that regard, I think that in the right hands, good things. In the wrong hands, perhaps not so good. In terms of design, in terms of what things look like and how they should be made and how they should be chosen, how they should be analyzed, I don't see very much change. I'm extremely confident of the way I approach any design issue. And so I would never be the person who showed up at somebody's office with a board and had said, this is what you're going to get. Because I think on a very simplistic level that the world of designers divides neatly into two little camps. One camp over here, camp is style centric, is what I call style centric. And for example, there are some great designers who do this. John Saladino comes to mind. Now, John Saladino is a brilliant man and he designs all of his own furniture, and he also wants you to sit in his chairs exactly the way he's telling you to sit in his chairs. But you know what a John Saladino project is going to look like, right? It's all based on his style, which is developed, that there are a lot of choices to pull from. The second kind of designer, if you will, is what I call a problem solver. So I am much more interested, I put myself in the second camp, and I'm much more interested in solving a problem. First thing I want to know is, what will your building allow if it's in a condo? Excuse me. What are the kinds of things that you like? What's your budget and what timeline? And then from there, we follow our usual practice of doing drawings, doing estimates, but in the beginning, for me, they're just widgets. The low cost sofa, the mid range, the high range. And that way it's very rational. You can say, these are the totals. Let's see. So I got to go back to the question now, because I think that I hope I'm still answering it. I think that certain things have changed. Certain things have changed for the better. And some things with respect to the practice of marketing your, I hate to put it this way, selling your design work has changed. And I'm never going to work that way.
Right.
I'm old school on that. I like teach your clients, make them feel, I love. Everybody's afraid because they grew up with math and science and having to dissect frogs in science class and all of those things. They were not, in most families, they were not being put in touch with their creative selves. And so part of this dialogue, this collaboration, the question and answer, and do this and do that, is making people feel safe, good about finally expressing who they are, what they want, and they're not frightened of mentioning it. After a while, I like that. And that's good and healthy. And so I always feel that, legends and TV folk speak about singular design. It really is. It's a collaborative, iterative process. Let's include here the contractors and the specialty painters and the glorious rug weavers and the painters. And I think that's the old-fashioned way of doing it, but it's also the way of making it personal, happy, and I don't own it when I leave. My clients own it.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Oh, one cute little quick story, if we have
Sure,
time.
yes, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So I spend so much time with my clients saying, we could do this and we could do this. And I wasn't there when this question and answer event occurred. But apparently, as friends will do, they want to go visit their friends' new houses. And my client said that her friend came in and said, now, Nalini, did you ever think about doing thus and such this way? And my client said, of course we did. Mary goes over many options with us, and what we have is what we want, and we love it.
I love that.
Yes, that's a good
Wow,
client.
that's a
That's
good
a really
client.
good client. Yeah.
The worst would be to say no, and I'll call her.
Yes. Or no, I won't call her and let's just change it. Yeah.
We have time for one more question. I really
Okay.
be a really good one.
Have I been bad?
Oh, you've been great. You have had so much great information. I
Amazing.
got into everything I wanted to say to you, but I do want to bring up this one because I really think it's important. You're a designer with a prolific career, and what would you say now, having this long career in design and 80 covers, was what would you want people to remember? What would you want them to think about your career in design? What would be the legacy? I myself am working on interior design community as my legacy. I want to build it in such a way that it will live on beyond me, and it will be interior design community for years to come. If I'm no longer here, I would still want it to be here.
Right. Hi, dog.
Yes, my puppy. But this is Bailey. What would you say you would want your legacy to be in the world of design?
I would say never strive for anything but the very best you're capable of doing. Make all your work kind to the neighborhood in which it resides, to the people who live within, and flexible. I would just say live up to the highest standards. Design is a moving, iterative thing. Hold on. Give your life to it. I have. It's just really, I'm not looking to have the presidents leave Washington and they all have libraries. I'm not planning on a library, but a book. I would say a book or a series of books. I really have gotten to the point now where I think that I'm ready. And people have been asking me for years, and now I think I have enough maturity to do it. So I would say maybe I'll finish my property here, and then I would just say my projects, but my projects would then be seen in a book form. And I think that I would like to, if I had, I mean, if at the time I leave this planet, I have money, I think that I would like to give some scholarships to talented young designers who need a help.
Yes, we do. We think about that a lot, that there are so many women-owned businesses, LGBTQ-owned businesses in the design world. And I think a lot about how they can be helped and how they can move forward and have successful careers that allow them to do those things too, to live in their truth of what,
Right.
of themselves as an artist.
I think that's mentoring students, helping them along, helping teach them is something that I do really care about. So I guess I'm going to have to start designing that plaque now.
Yes. I love it. I love it. Book, the plaque.
Right.
You got a big job.
You have to see my dog. You have to
Yes,
see
we
my
do.
dog.
We'd love to see the dog.
Where is he? Is he here?
He's upstairs.
Is it possible? Can you let him down?
You calm down. Karen.
Karen. Oh, you didn't put him in his crate.
Come on, baby.
Oh, it's right over here. Correct. Karen. Come on, I want you to meet someone. Come on, baby. Come on over here. Come on over here. Come on. He's only 190 pounds. Here.
Oh my goodness. I love
Oh, yeah.
so wonderful.
Come on. Come on, give me a kiss. Hey, look
That
at
handsome boy.
So gorgeous. So gorgeous. Thank you so much, Mary. This has been so wonderful. You've been a dream to have on the podcast.
Oh, I was so honored when you asked.
Absolutely.
And your questions are the best.
You know, I love hearing that.
Yeah, but they are. I've been telling everybody in my office is that, my God, when I read her questions, she did a really good job. They're sensitive, they're thoughtful. I think she knows something about me. She's referring back to so anyway,
Yes.
thanks for this opportunity.
Thank you. I really appreciate it too. Thank you. And good night, everyone.